$76,000. That's what Caitlin Clark earned in her first year with the Indiana Fever. The same Caitlin Clark who generated somewhere between $15 and $30 million in additional revenue for the WNBA. The same player whose jersey became the fastest selling in women's basketball history. The same athlete whose games drew television audiences that rivaled NBA regular season matchups. $76,000. Let that number sit with you for a moment, because what's coming in 2026 could either fix this insanity or destroy everything the league has built. We're not talking about some distant problem. We're talking about a ticking time bomb that's about to detonate right in the middle of women's basketball's biggest growth moment in history. The collective bargaining agreement is up for renegotiation. New media deals worth potentially $300 million annually are on the table. And the players who created this explosion of value are watching every single move. Many of you have been saying this for weeks in the comments. You've been connecting the dots. You saw Caitlin Clark transform the entire landscape and then watched her get paid less than what some athletes spend on a single night out. You were onto something. This isn't just about fairness. This is about whether the WNBA can survive its own success. If you believe the story behind the story matters, if you think athletes deserve to be paid what they're actually worth, hit that like button right now. It tells us we're on the right track with this investigation. So what exactly is happening in 2026 that has analysts, agents, and apparently people like Stephen A. Smith losing their minds? Let's filter out the noise and look at what's really at stake here. The current collective bargaining agreement expires. That's the contract between the league and the players that determines everything from salary caps to working conditions. It's essentially the constitution of professional women's basketball, and it's about to be completely rewritten. At the same time, the WNBA is negotiating new television and streaming deals. The current agreements bring in about $60 million per year total. Industry insiders are projecting the next round could reach $250 to $300 million annually. We're not talking about a modest increase. We're talking about the financial foundation of the league potentially quintupling overnight. This is where the real tension lives. If the league's value explodes by 5 times, shouldn't player compensation increase proportionally? Basic economics says yes, but institutional inertia and complex revenue-sharing structures say it's complicated. Here's what makes this moment uniquely volatile. The players who will be negotiating these new contracts aren't the veterans of 5 years ago. They're Caitlin Clark, Lexie Hull, and the next generation of stars who've seen their impact firsthand. They've watched ticket prices skyrocket. They've seen sold-out arenas. They've experienced the media frenzy. They know exactly what they've created, and they'll be negotiating with unprecedented leverage. The math is brutally simple. Caitlin Clark's 4-year rookie contract is worth approximately $338,000 total. That breaks down to roughly $76,000 in year 1. For context, the NBA minimum salary is $1.1 million. We're not even comparing superstars to superstars here. We're comparing the WNBA's most impactful player to the NBA's absolute floor. The player who has done more for league visibility in one season than the previous 5 years combined is making less than many middle managers at mid-size companies. Lexie Hull finds herself in an even more precarious position. Despite her crucial role in the Fever's resurgence and her growing fan base, Hull earns approximately $67,000 annually. That's the compensation for a professional athlete in America's premier women's basketball league. An athlete whose team's games are suddenly must-see television. An athlete whose presence contributes directly to sold-out venues and surging merchandise sales. The numbers simply don't compute. Then there's the veteran perspective. Sophie Cunningham has paid her dues across multiple seasons, building her brand and establishing herself as one of the league's most recognizable personalities. Her social media presence alone drives engagement that translates directly to league visibility and sponsor interest. Yet, when you examine her contract details against the value she brings both on court and in marketing appeal, the same pattern emerges: systemic undervaluation that transcends experience level. The maximum salary in the WNBA for 2024 was approximately $241,000. Read that again. The absolute highest paid player in the entire league made less than the NBA's minimum salary. The disparity isn't just significant, it's astronomical. It's the kind of gap that makes people question whether the league is actually serious about retaining its talent. This is where the international complication enters the equation, and it's a dimension that fundamentally distorts everything. Top WNBA players can earn $500,000 to $1.5 million playing overseas in Turkey, China, or various European countries during the off-season. That's right. Many players make multiple times their WNBA salary by spending their off-season playing abroad. The world's premier women's basketball league can't offer its players enough financial security to make it their singular focus. Some stars have made the calculation that the WNBA is actually their side gig. Imagine if LeBron James had to play in China every offseason just to make ends meet because his NBA salary wasn't sufficient. The comparison sounds absurd because it is absurd. Yet that's the exact reality WNBA stars navigate annually. The travel is exhausting. The time away from family is substantial. The injury risk doubles because players never get a true offseason to rest and recover. Breanna Stewart tore her Achilles playing in Europe. Other stars have dealt with serious injuries playing overseas that cost them WNBA seasons. For Caitlin Clark, this international equation becomes even more complex. Her marketability in the United States is unparalleled, but that doesn't necessarily translate overseas. Her value proposition is intimately tied to the American market, American media, American brand partnerships. Would a Chinese or Turkish league pay her significantly more when her cultural impact is primarily domestic? The calculation becomes murky. And that's exactly why 2026 matters so much. Drop a comment right now. What do you think should happen with WNBA salaries in 2026? Should they match the revenue growth, or is there something we're missing about the economics? Your perspective matters because this affects the future of women's sports. Let's talk about what Caitlin Clark actually created in her rookie season, because the numbers are almost unbelievable. Television ratings for Fever games averaged over 1 million viewers. Some matchups drew nearly 3 million. Those aren't just good numbers for the WNBA. Those are numbers that compete with NBA regular season games. Networks started scrambling to add more WNBA coverage mid-season because the demand was undeniable. Advertisers who had never considered women's basketball suddenly wanted in. The economic impact rippled through every level of the league ecosystem. Ticket sales tell an even more dramatic story. Indiana Fever home games that used to have plenty of available seats suddenly required purchasing months in advance. Secondary market prices exploded, with some seats selling for 10 times their face value. Road games, wherever the Fever played, became instant sellouts. Other teams started restructuring their schedules, hoping to maximize their matchups against Indiana. The Caitlin Clark effect wasn't just about the Fever. It elevated the entire league's profile. Merchandise sales broke every existing record. Clark's jersey became the fastest-selling in women's basketball history within weeks of her debut. But it wasn't just her jersey. Overall, WNBA merchandise sales surged across the board because new fans discovering the league through Clark started following other players and teams. The rising tide lifted all boats. Sponsors took notice. Brands that had minimal WNBA presence suddenly wanted partnerships. The league's sponsorship revenue increased dramatically, directly tied to the visibility Clark and her generation brought. Reading between the lines of industry reports, conservative estimates suggest Clark generated $15 to $30 million in additional revenue for the WNBA in her rookie season alone. That's a conservative estimate. Some analysts believe the actual figure could be significantly higher when you account for long-term brand value increases, new fan acquisition, and the downstream effects on future media deals. Her compensation, a fraction of 1% of that value. This is where the 2026 negotiation becomes make or break. The players' union will have hard data showing unprecedented revenue growth. They'll have viewership numbers that speak for themselves. They'll have proof that the value exists. The question is whether the league's ownership and structure can adapt quickly enough to match reality. If they can, if the new collective bargaining agreement includes salary caps and maximums that genuinely reflect player value, the WNBA could enter a golden era. Players could focus exclusively on their American careers. The product would improve. The fan base would grow even larger. But if the league fails to make that leap, the consequences could be catastrophic. We're getting into speculation territory here, but the breadcrumbs lead somewhere dark. When Clark and Hull finish their rookie contracts and become eligible for new deals, they'll negotiate with full knowledge of their worth. If the offers don't reflect reality, what happens? Do they prioritize international opportunities? Do they consider alternative leagues? Do they leverage their massive platforms to push for changes that could create labor conflicts? Multiple sources are whispering about player frustration that goes beyond public statements. Stars like Breanna Stewart and Jewel Lloyd have been increasingly vocal about salary disparities, but that's just what we see publicly. Behind closed doors, agents are reportedly preparing for intense negotiations. The Players Association is building cases. Everyone recognizes that 2026 isn't just another contract cycle. It's the moment that will define whether the WNBA can match its surging popularity with institutional maturity. Looking at how other women's leagues have handled similar inflection points offers some hope, but also warnings. The National Women's Soccer League significantly increased salaries after the USCS. Women's national team's World Cup success created a public conversation about pay equity. Top players now earn $300,000 to $450,000 annually. The minimum salary jumped to $35,000. The league looked at revenue growth, media interest, and cultural impact, then adjusted accordingly. That's the model many are hoping the WNBA will follow. Women's professional tennis provides another comparison. Grand Slam tournaments now offer equal prize money for men and women, a change that came after years of advocacy and recognition that women's matches generated comparable viewership and ticket sales. The principle was simple. If the value generated is equivalent, the compensation should be too. Even the new Professional Women's Hockey League made headlines by offering salaries ranging from $35,000 to $80,000 with full benefits in its inaugural season. A brand new league recognized that to attract and retain talent, they needed compensation, allowing athletes to focus solely on their sport. The WNBA has structural complexities those leagues don't face. Revenue sharing agreements, collective bargaining frameworks, salary caps designed to ensure competitive balance. But these structural realities don't negate the fundamental question. As the league's value increases exponentially, shouldn't player compensation increase proportionally? Here's what we know for certain. The money is coming. Those media rights deals worth $250 to $300 million annually aren't speculation. They're inevitable, given the viewership numbers and demographic appeal. The expansion fees from new franchises could inject hundreds of millions more into the league ecosystem. The revenue exists. The question is whether institutional structures can evolve fast enough to distribute it fairly. If you want to see how this story develops, if you want to stay ahead of what could be the biggest shift in women's sports history, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're going to be covering every development in these negotiations because 2026 is going to be absolutely critical. Next time, we're breaking down exactly which players have the most leverage going into these negotiations and what that could mean for the entire league structure. The WNBA stands at a crossroads. The path forward requires recognizing that Caitlin Clark earning $76,000 while generating $30 million in value isn't sustainable. It's not just unfair, it's economically irrational. 2026 will reveal whether the league chooses growth or stagnation. We'll be watching every move.